I think we're operating our reality. We only see it, a sliver of it, or we only want to see a sliver of it. We've been conditioned to ignore everything else. When you look at the whole electromagnetic spectrum, you have this sliver of white light that we can see, but sometimes this stuff is still here. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not here. There are negative entities out there, or some that, like these elementals, that can be good or bad. You can relate it almost to like the Celtic fairy lore over in your country, where some are good, some are bad, or just mischievous. And I think everything has its own personality. But there were twice where I suddenly got tightness in my chest, overwhelming anxiety. And the first time it happened, I didn't know what it was, but it got so bad, I had to step outside for a minute. When I stepped outside, it went away. I went back in, it came back again, but I was more prepared for it. And I realized that whatever was there didn't want me there and was trying to get me to leave.
Hello, welcome to the first episode of 2026. Today we'll be talking to Milyssa Leigh, who has had many years' experience facing ghosts, spirits, and the unknown ultimately, and also UFOs. So many different kinds of phenomena. It's just incredible. Stay tuned. We have some interesting guests on the way. I can't reveal everything to you just now, but trust me, we have some interesting, very interesting experiences on the way. And as many channels do ask you, please like and subscribe. We need your help to get this out there, to get the algorithm on our side. This content will always be free for everybody, as I believe knowledge should be afforded to everybody as we educate others about the paranormal, continue the discussion, and learn from each other as we form a more peaceful world. Enjoy, and I hope you like this first episode of 2026. Stan out. Hello and welcome back to Paranormal Perspectives. My name is Stan, and today another quite interesting conversation. So this is our first one of 2026, the start of a number of fascinating experiences to be shared. Tonight I have the pleasure of speaking to Milyssa Leigh, who is the host of Transdimensional Realities on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Yeah, how are you doing? Thank you for being here.
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on.
It's a pleasure. And as you guys may know, I was on Melyssa's own show a couple of weeks ago, and that was a real pleasure and a great opportunity to be vulnerable, really, and I suppose ultimately talk about my very strange life. And as for many people out there, it's very hard to talk about the paranormal sometimes, and this is why shows like Transdimensional Realities and all the many others out there that are kind of growing as time goes by. It's becoming normal to talk about the paranormal and more accepted socially, and a great opportunity to learn from each other, really. Yeah, so Milyssa, just kind of talking about yourself, really. So the people watching you on my channel may not know about you just yet. So we've got to know who you are, what makes you excited, what makes you happy, what gets you up out of bed every day, basically, and also what drew you to the paranormal as well?
Well, lots of things to cover here. Well, as I said, you mentioned I'm Milyssa Leigh. I have a video and audio, I call it a podcast, but it's more of a conversational type show, Transdimensional Realities. The video portion is on YouTube, and the audio portion is on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, or at paukradio.com, which on the network, which I help run. We have several shows that we feature. Mine's the newest. So as for myself, I've been a paranormal investigator over 20 years. I've hosted some other podcasts in the past. This is my newest. And but I've been having strange experiences my entire life. So a lot of them I had to think about later in life because I didn't fully understand what was happening at the time.
Okay, so was it more like a natural revelation of the paranormal, like, or was it something that you kind of wanted to find ultimately?
Well, I was always interested in the paranormal, everything strange, Bigfoot, UFOs, all of that. But yeah, when I was in elementary school, I started getting fascinated with ghosts. We had a couple of ghost books in our school library. I always checked them out. I started reading more and more.
Yeah, same here. I'm a bookworm too. That's exactly what I did, straight for the ghost books.
In my teens, I saw an old documentary called The Amazing World of Psychic Phenomenon. And in it, it had somebody going around the graves with a tape recorder. Now, I knew nothing of EVP at that time. I don't think the term EVP was even coined yet. Kind of giving my age away here. But me and my brother and a friend, we thought, oh, that looks cool. Let's go do it. And we had a little 1800 cemetery in my town. So we went there and with a tape recorder and we started recording. And, we did several, nothing happened. And then we went to this one grave in the back of the cemetery. It had a cement slab on top. And somebody had knocked down the headstone and it was gone. So I had no idea who was there. So we put the recorder down, we stood a ways. And this is in the daylight too. This is broad daylight we're doing this. And after a few minutes, we go back, rewind it, play it back, and it goes for a little bit. All of a sudden, there's a faint woman's voice. And we had to play it a couple times, boost the volume. I'm not kidding. It said in a whispered voice, "I'm dead, help me."
Wow, so that suggests awareness.
Yeah, and so we got excited. Well, my one friend, my next door neighbor, he was freaking out and ready to leave right then and there. And I'm going, no. We're going to try to get more. And we recorded there again. And when we played it back, right in the very beginning, you could hear my footsteps walking away from the recorder. And then this same woman's voice, this time much louder. And it had an echo like it was in an enclosed room. And she goes, "It isn't finished." Now, that's all we got there that day, but that's what really started my interest in the paranormal. But it actually took me many years later, 25 years ago when I moved out here to New Jersey from Los Angeles. The first house I lived in had activity. I heard my name being called a couple of times. There were strange lights. We just got a feeling of being watched. So I started taking just a regular old Super VHS camera, no infrared, and starting to film. And I started getting a lot of anomalies. And I'm not talking about a dust orb flying in front of the lens. No, I'm talking about a bright pulsating orb coming out of the far wall, the back of the living room, meandering its way along the floor in almost like a curving pattern, and then coming up and passing me. And it was pulsating like this the whole time. And then the other great capture I got was I was sitting in the living room again, recording, and I was panning the camera over, and all of a sudden this orb literally goes streaking past really fast. And I reacted a little bit, and then I kept panning over, and across the room was this rocking chair. And all of a sudden, this thing, and I have no idea what it was, it almost looked like a tadpole in that it had a bulbous head tapering down to almost a tail. It flew out from underneath my rocking chair, flew right past me into the doorway into the kitchen. Now, I played it back. I've gone frame by frame. I've looked at it, and I have no idea what it is. It was a whitish gray color. I never saw anything like that again, at least at that house. So I invited a local paranormal team to come in and investigate. And when they came, I investigated along with them, and I was hooked. So I joined them and was with them for a couple of years. And then I went and formed my own team, and we investigated for about 15 years throughout New Jersey and in New York and Pennsylvania. So I've got dozens of investigations under my belt.
That's pretty wild for people to see those kind of things. As you know, it's quite rare to see it with a naked eye, but to also, of course, record it on various equipment. That's fascinating. And I wonder, have you ever considered the fact that you may have some sort of psychic ability, or in some way maybe act as a conduit for certain events to happen, as in you may energize or provoke certain events?
I've been told I have from other psychics and whatnot. I don't see it that much. I'm intuitive, and I can be very intuitive. Sometimes I've been on investigations and I feel like I've had information downloaded to give me some background on what's going on, or, who's there. I also do tarot card readings, and I'm usually pretty good and spot ons. I have a lot of different interests, and it all seems to revolve around the paranormal and high strangeness, as we call it.
I love that phrase. I keep hearing it everywhere all the time, and I just want that on a t-shirt. It just sums up everything that's happening at the moment in the world in so many levels, really. But yeah, I kind of wonder if you were born with the light switched on, so to speak, because it seems to be like these. Of course, you visit certain locations just with the hope that you may see something, as we know we tend to all do, really. But the fact that you've seen quite a few things, to me, it just seems like, yeah, I mean, you could have something. I sort of felt like when I spoke to you on your show, actually, that I can tell maybe one of my kind maybe being out there in some way or form. We come in different forms with different energies and abilities of sorts, but you can't really dabble in the paranormal without, you can't spread jam on butter on bread directly. You get a bit of yourself too sometimes. So I've even known, quite skeptical people spend many years trying to observe the paranormal, try to explain it away, and as they have every right to question everything, eventually find that they're beginning to see things themselves and begin to see what those they have spoken to who they didn't believe initially. So yeah, I think you're one of those magical people.
Well, I can say that I've never seen an apparition with my eyes. I've caught a lot on video using different types of equipment, thermal imaging cameras. We've caught things that look like human figures. But EVP is one of my favorite go-tos, because getting a disembodied voice that wasn't there when you recorded it and you play it back, and most times it's just random words or a phrase that really doesn't have much to do with what you're doing or talking about. But every now and then you get that intelligent response to a question. And that's what really excites me, because you're having that one-on-one communication with something. I'm not going to say ghost, because my belief in ghosts is vastly different than the standard paranormal community. I'm not as convinced that all the time it's spirits of people who've died who's still haunting a location for whatever reason they can't move on. In my research, I found there's a lot more going on than that simple explanation.
Yeah, I can understand that. You've made a number of EVP recordings. Do you believe it could be explained with, what's the phrase, ghost tape theory, where certain sounds, noises, and events can be essentially played out through recorded, localized environments?
Yeah.
For anyone watching that doesn't know.
The stone tape theory is very popular in the paranormal community. I don't necessarily subscribe to it in the way that they do. Maybe the what's underground granite, which has a lot of crystals in it, might be able to cause some of that phenomena. They say running water maybe. But instead of something being imprinted on the land, there's two theories that I have. One is that there's something else on the land. I've done some investigations where two houses on the same street across from each other were having the exact same experiences. And we got to investigate that case for multiple years, the longest case I've ever investigated. In the end, we started to figure out it wasn't a ghost. It was something attached to the land that I would call an elemental. And sometimes it could be mischievous and stir up a little bit of trouble. Sometimes it just did what it did. One time, one of my clients actually saw something in her bedroom, and she woke up to this wispy, tall figure standing by her dresser. She said she made a noise, like in surprise. This thing turned around and looked at her. And she called me the next morning and she goes, "You're not going to believe what happened. You're not going to believe it. You're going to think I'm crazy." And it took me a few minutes to get her to calm down and tell me what it was. And she said, "I'm not kidding you. It was a flippin' alien," is how she described it, with the tall, lanky, wraparound black eyes kind of thing. And yet those type of figures, it doesn't necessarily mean it was an extraterrestrial, because there are reports of people seeing similar things in much different circumstances that don't seem to have anything to do with UFOs or anything like that. It could be what that elemental shape presented itself as.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I've seen other podcasts begin to merge the two worlds of ultimately ghosts, spirits, the paranormal, if you think in that sphere, and then there's aliens, ufology, UAPs, and anything extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional. now people seem to be merging the two, saying actually it could be potentially explained that extraterrestrial events could be paranormal, as in locally within this dimension, happening outside of our understanding. Maybe it could be advanced spiritual entities, or it could simply be on the flip side of that, really. So extra-dimensional terrestrial beings interacting with our plane on Earth in a way that we could maybe tangibly understand. Sometimes we may find that as frightening. Sometimes we'd be maybe amazed or inspired by these things, but it might be them simply they're lowering their vibrations, dipping down into our sphere, so to speak. So yeah, did you think there could be maybe an explanation that, there could both be one and the same?
I think it's not that simple, because we talked about the phrase high strangeness, which is a great umbrella term for all of these weird things. I titled my podcast Transdimensional Realities. And the reason I did that is because I think we're operating our reality. We only see it, a sliver of it. Or we only want to see a sliver of it. We've been conditioned to ignore everything else. I liken it to the light spectrum. When you look at the whole electromagnetic spectrum, you have this sliver of white light that we can see, and then it goes straight out into all different directions, from infrared to ultraviolet, and that we can't see. But sometimes this stuff is still here, though. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not here in our reality. And I agreed with you when you mentioned about things flitting in and out of our reality. That can be the same for not only what we think of as ghosts, cryptids like Bigfoot or other weird creatures, UFOs, aliens. One of the cases that I'm most fascinated in is the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. Now, they have a television show on the History Channel over here that's been going for 6 years now, where this ranch,
here too.
Yeah, this ranch, which has all types of weird activity, and I'm really impressed with the show because scientifically what they're finding and proving with high-tech equipment is nothing short of amazing. And yet I feel this is all part of our reality. And even when you start thinking of alternate realities, multiple dimensions, parallel universes, they all kind of fall under the same umbrella, so to speak, but yet they might have their differences. We just don't know enough yet. But I do believe that we are dealing with entities, whether spiritual or otherwise, that can flit in and out of our reality.
Yeah. So I don't know enough about Skinwalker Ranch just yet. I've kind of dipped into it here and there, but it's one of those things where I need to really clear my schedule and kind of go all the way through. But I do know a lot of people over here in the UK watch it, and my best understanding is it seems to be like a localized paranormal event that obviously keeps on happening. And I know people have cited particular beings, cryptids, I think I've heard the word being used there. Beings that seem to be not in our known species, at least understanding of species. But I do wonder, from what I know so far, like, could essentially that location be maybe a split through time, through realities, maybe where certain things may cross over? And if so, did someone start this thing off, or was it just purely a natural event? Could it last for 100 years and then eventually dissipate naturally? I'm kind of curious as to sort of what you think those things might be.
Well, I would recommend anyone to watch the show better than I can explain it, because over the time, they have discovered electromagnetic energies. There's this one section of the ranch that seems to have this bubble that they found on LiDAR that goes above the ground and underground of energy. They've done all sorts of experiments. There's something metallic, something large metallic buried in the mesa right next to it. They've been investigating. They've had all sorts of UAP sightings, creatures, strange things, lights. I mean, it's pretty wild. Now, one that is lesser known, there was a ranch, and I was friends with the owner outside of Phoenix in Arizona. It was in the Rainbow Valley. It was called the Stardust Ranch. And this guy, John Edmonds, and his wife, they bought the ranch 25 or so years ago. And almost from the very beginning, they had all these issues, strange issues. Everything from all the furniture in the house winding up out in the pool, in the empty pool in back. No one knows how it got there. Seeing UFOs over the ranch, actually having alien encounters. Now, he claims that he's actually killed a couple of these things. He says, unless you take the head, the body vanishes. I'm going, you took the head? He had a samurai sword, a katana sword.
He had a samurai sword as well. But he must either been expecting them or he just happened to have it, with him at the time.
Well, I mean, he's had so many encounters that, he was arming himself. And
gosh, bless him.
They'd see UFOs over the ranch. He and his wife were both abducted. And he had written a book about it. Well, a friend of his wrote a book about it. And then he used to go on the other paranormal programs and was even on an episode of Ghost Adventures once, one of the earlier seasons. Unfortunately, I was invited to go out there and investigate. And unfortunately, he got sick and passed away. And his wife gave up the ranch. But what's strange is nobody knows who owns it now. It's a mystery who owns it. And I have a sneaky suspicion it's probably the government or somebody to get their hands on it.
Is it all cordoned off? Can you still access it?
Well, it's fenced off. But, okay. I mean, it's on a road where there's other ranches all around him. I mean, it wasn't a very big ranch, not like Skinwalker. But he had a lot of strange things happening there, and there was a lot of other researchers that went there and collaborated what was going on. So it wasn't just wild stories. Other people had experiences too.
This is what's so great. I mean, hearing the story, I can imagine for that family, it was quite a challenge to live with. I know part of it is the wonder of discovering something incredible though, but the other part of it is like, I'm on my own facing these things, and how do I protect myself and my land, and why they're here, why they're chosen this specific place to appear, and how does it happen, I notice now more and more, especially since COVID, that more and more people seem to be into ufology and the idea that there is life out there, and me included really, because it's something it's not like I never took it seriously though, but I never really spent time with it because I didn't have first-hand experiences back then to be able to, delve into that and understand that more. But now I've spoken to numerous people who have told me these amazing stories. Have you heard of Malcolm Robinson from
yes.
Good old Malky? He's a lovely chap, he is. I had him on an episode a while ago and he just blew my mind. He was there when the subject of ufology or just general UFOs in Scotland weren't taken seriously. This was I think the 70s, I think it was. Not meaning to show his age. Sorry, Malcolm. But back in the 70s, he was one of the first to start really investigating. Kind of do similar to what you do, and he does it more from a reporting kind of angle as well, to add a bit of maybe substance to it though. I'm going to investigate it as almost like a detective in a way, just gather evidence. He has, I think he showed evidence of a pair of jeans that had been burnt during a certain incident, and he actually has those in his house. He showed back then, and he's seen some pretty crazy things. But back then, people like him had a crowd, had people following them to understand these experiences, but in the media weren't taken seriously. Now, Malcolm, bless him, he's on all podcasts, doing all sorts of different things, telling his stories through his books and all this la-di-da. And so many people out there are talking about it now. It seems to be a really big thing, and it's far more normalised to talk about these events. And I even had my first UFO event a few years ago. It's only happened once. I was actually went to a circus in the countryside. My kids, my wife and my kids went out one evening, a last-minute planned thing, and we went to this old-fashioned circus with a big top and everything. It was only a small gathering. I had a great time that night, and just as we were leaving, it was summertime, so the sun was just about setting, but still bright enough to see. We got in the car and made our way through the countryside, and I saw what I could describe as a large shard of metal suspended in the air just above the tree line. And as I was driving along, as you probably know, in the UK we have big pylons and wires going across, and even smaller ones alongside the roads going to these old properties. And I'm thinking, well, could be a big piece of debris stuck, just floating up there, just dangling somehow. And the closer I got, I could see more detail. It was very, very sharp. It almost looked like a very thin diamond. I could see the texture of the metal. I could see it reflecting the fading sunlight. And as I approached, we went around it. I could see it was actually a three-dimensional object, and nothing was suspending it in the air, which is really bizarre. And it was making no noise. It was completely silent. So, of course, looking at something metal, I would assume it's going to be quite heavy. It would need some sort of propulsion to keep it up, unless it's being dangled by a crane or something. But yeah, no noise, no fumes. I just can't explain it. We just drove past it, gone. And it was with us as we went. I looked back, I think just down the road, about 30 seconds later, I think I looked through the mirror on the side mirror to see where we were coming from. Nothing. Disappeared. And I can't explain that. I mean, it might just be a trick of the light, maybe. The fact is, we went around it. We could see it three-dimensionally as we went around it. I was wearing my glasses at the time, so I thought, okay, it could be refraction of the lights. But I was actually looking through the window, trying different angles, and yeah, I mean, that's when I began to think, this is beginning to be a real thing now, because I've heard people talk about it, but now I'm literally seeing something like that. I mean, I can't say for definite if that was definitely UFO, but either way, that's odd. I've never seen anything like it since, never seen anything like it before. So, yeah, but I love the fact that people are talking about this now.
It's technically a UFO in that it's unidentified. You don't know what it is. It's up in the air. Not exactly flying. That's where the term UAP might come in. Unidentified aerial phenomenon. So, but if it's reflecting light, it's not a trick of your eyes. I've only had 2 experiences where I saw things I couldn't explain. Well, the first was back in 2008, January, and I was driving down a local road to go to a restaurant, and there was a lot of traffic on the road, but all of a sudden, to my left, coming at me out of the east, there was this string of lights. There were about 15 to 20 of them. They looked like orange globes, maybe about that big. And they were traveling in a long formation. It was a loose formation because sometimes some would pass others or whatnot, but it stretched out, I would say, at least several hundred yards, and it was coming right at me. And I'm sitting there watching them, and they were about maybe 100 feet off the ground, and they flew within a couple hundred feet of me. I rolled down the window. I thought maybe they were drones, and yet I couldn't hear anything. Because drones are notorious for all that buzzing.
Of course, yeah.
And there was nothing. And I watched them. They went from the east, they flew by me, and then they went to the west until they disappeared. And I was so mad. I wanted to get my camera and film, but I was stuck in traffic, stop and go traffic, and I couldn't stop, and there was nowhere to pull over. So unfortunately, I couldn't do anything but observe. But then a year or 2 later, I was down at the shore, as we say here in New Jersey, not the beach, the shore. And I was sitting out with friends on a terrace of our hotel, looking out at the beach. It was dark. And all of a sudden, over one of the hotels, I saw one of those same orange globes come up over the roof of the hotel and then quickly dip down. And I'm going, okay. So I kind of just put out there in my mind, if that was you all, do you mind showing me again? A few minutes later, 2 orbs appeared down the beach from the south, making their way up the beach. And as they flew over, they reached a certain point of the beach where they made a turn and went out directly over the ocean and disappeared in some fog or clouds. But right behind them, there were 2 more that came and did the exact same thing. And this happened about 5 times. A pair of these orbs would come up the beach and go into the bank. And that one I was able to catch on video. Now, to be fair, I can't say what they were. Okay, they're unidentified. They're orange globes of light. They did not appear to be drones. They didn't have any FFA lighting on them. They didn't pulsate. They didn't make any noise that I heard. So all I can say is I don't know what I saw. But it's unidentified. And as of that point, that's all I can really say. Now, I did have one other experience that was very weird. And people are going to say this is pareidolia, or it's just my, matrixing my imagination. But I don't think so, because I was in Colorado, And in the San Luis Valley section of Colorado, it's a very big UFO hotspot. That's where the first reports of cattle mutilations came from. A lot of people see UFOs in that area. And there's this one place called the UFO Watchtower where these people have this property and they built this building with a big platform on top. And they always have people coming in. There's a campsite next door and you can go up on the roof or whatever and sit there and watch the skies and see if you can see anything. And supposedly people see stuff. So I was there with some friends, and the first night it rained, so couldn't see anything. The second night, it wasn't raining, but the sky was cloud covered. So my friends and I, we took chairs and we were sitting out by the platform, but down on the ground, and we're just watching the sky. All of a sudden, this one section of sky directly above me started to change, and I swear to God, it formed the outline of a face of a gray alien. It had the big eyes, the whole shape of the head, bulbous head, more pointed chin, and it just formed like it was staring at me and stayed there for about 30 seconds. And what's strange is, clouds are always changing. So maybe you would see something for a moment and then it disappears, but they stayed there. I closed my eyes. I shook my head, looked back up. It was still there. And like I said, if it lasted for 30 seconds, when you count it out, that's a long time. And then suddenly it just faded out and was gone. I asked my friends if they saw anything. They didn't. Could it have been my imagination? Maybe. I don't feel it was. There was something about it that just struck me. And then later that night, I was sitting in my own campsite. Everybody else had gone to bed. I was up. It was about midnight. And I was starting to get tired. Now, where we are, pitch black, no lights, in the middle of nowhere. And I was just sitting there and nothing happened. And I was about ready to get up, pack up, and go to bed. And in the corner of my eye, I see a bright ball of light streak to the ground in the campsite right next to me. So maybe 20 feet away. And it came down at like an angle like this. Very fast, but it just appeared about 10 feet above the ground and just went whoosh. I tried recreating that every way I could to see if there was a light reflection or something. Maybe I turned my head and did something. Nope, I could not reproduce that. So those are about the only strange experiences I could say that I've had with UFOs.
Yeah, but I like how you do approach this as you don't simply believe them straight away. You do analyze them and try to explain them in different angles ultimately. So, for example, the grey alien in the sky thing being potentially pareidolia. Yeah, I mean that could be a potential explanation. But I've noticed that when these events do happen, there's a feeling that you have, and as you say, you are drawn to it to look at that place at that exact time. Yeah, we do see faces and all sorts of different things. I've experienced it myself sometimes, but there seems to be something about connecting with the sky that seems to, I don't know, the sky seems to be some sort of conduit to connect with something greater sometimes, because I've had my experiences when I was a kid, really. I call these people the sky doctors. Part of my recovery after my near-death experience. I used to walk away from my friends, lie in the grass. I used to just look at clouds. Instinctively, I just almost was taken over by something to walk away, lie down, look up. I used to just look at the clouds and didn't really know why I was doing it until the clouds eventually opened up and I could see these people through this hole in the sky, discussing with each other, discussing with me in a language that I can't really, understand now. But talking to them, I psychically knew they were talking about me, checking on me. And I'd always walk away from these meetings just feeling a bit better every time. There seems to be something about, the infinite blue, really, which, or, the blue behind the clouds as well. But either way, that seems to connect us with something. And yeah, you could say it's pareidolia, or it could be that something out there was trying to nudge you or slowly, carefully reveal itself bit by bit. You could explain it in many different ways. But either way, that's what makes the paranormal so exciting. It's untamed ground. It's something we can't fully explain yet. And as it said, it's parallel to the normal, as in normal being the understood and known scientific process and repeatable process. And there's so much about our world and our universe that we have yet to know. We've barely scratched on 0.1% of what we could know. I find these stories fascinating and exciting. And I suppose for anyone investigating in these, for example, if they want to investigate a certain location or visit a place with friends to try and experience their own experiences, if they haven't had experiences before, like, do you have any recommendations on how people would handle that, really? Like, how would they go in there with an open mind, with the right equipment, really? Because I know you record at EVPs. Like, do you recommend having like a recording device with you with them to start with, for example, and do you have a protection process?
Well, when I talk to people who are interested in doing paranormal investigations, I tell them to start with the basics, which for me is a digital audio recorder. Some people like old school. Some people like old cassette recorders. Of course, you pick up the noise of the recorder as its machinery, but digital recorders are great. Camera, you can use your phone. You can also, if you have a video camera that has infrared capabilities, that's great, but you can shoot in white light too. But those three tools are great for starting out. And depending on the location, always make sure you get permission to go in there first. And some places that are known to be haunted charge, so sometimes be prepared to have to pay to get in, because that.
You mean of the owners, not spiritual permission? I was going to ask which way. Make sure you can legally enter the place.
Yeah, the living owners, yes. But some places that are popular, they charge because that's the way they make money to upkeep these places, because most of them are abandoned or not really functional anymore. But and so make sure you're not trespassing. And when you go in, try to keep an open mind. And I don't know how you could tell somebody this, but don't freak out. If something happens, you hear a noise like you see in the ghost shows, ghost hunters, they're always screaming, "Oh my God, dude, what was that?" You guys been doing this 20 years now. You'd think you'd be used to it by now. I hear something and I just like stop and listen, see if it repeats itself. I've heard voices. I've heard in one, there was this old house where their cat died the year before, and I physically heard it, well, audibly heard it, and caught it on my recorders of a cat meowing a few times during the night. And they say there's no other cats there. So
amazing.
It's, but see, I don't get scared. I'll get a little freaked sometimes, but I don't go running out of a place. I am more curious than anything. I'm the type of person that you can put me down in a basement with the lights out and I'll sit down there in the total darkness with a recorder asking questions, and I don't get scared. Now, I have come across some energies a couple of times in the past that I wouldn't exactly call them negative. I've never encountered what I would consider something super negative or demonic, which I don't believe in demons anyway. But, there are negative entities out there, or some that, like these elementals, that can be good or bad. You can relate it almost to like the Celtic fairy lore over in your country, where some are good, some are bad, or just mischievous. And I think everything has its own personality. But there were twice where I suddenly got tightness in my chest, overwhelming anxiety. And the first time it happened, I didn't know what it was, but it got so bad, I had to step outside for a minute. When I stepped outside, it went away. I went back in, it came back again, but I was more prepared for it. And I realized that whatever was there didn't want me there and was trying to get me to leave. And I wouldn't leave. I wouldn't bow down to it. And we figured at the time, we thought it was just a very angry, possibly human spirit. But I just don't get freaked out. The only other time was I did an investigation of a private home that was experiencing some pretty heavy activity. The client was pushed down the stairs once. The children were having night terrors. And when we came in to do the preliminary, it was me and one other investigator, and we talked to the client. We walked through the whole house, and that same feeling came over me, like it was trying to get me to leave. And my other investigator, he was off in this one part of the house, and all of a sudden he got hit by like an electrical shock. And it wasn't just static. I mean, it was 10 times more intense than that, which tells me you're dealing with something pretty powerful. Could be very, very nasty. So when we left, we walked out and went to the driveway and we were talking, and the damn thing followed us outside. It was still trying to get me to leave from the driveway. It wasn't until I got in my car and started driving down the street that it went away.
So what was it doing to make you want to leave in the driveway? Like, we're talking like auditory, or you just had a bad feeling?
Well, you're feeling it's using energy and it's making you feel this energy, a tightening of your chest. It almost feels like you're having a panic attack.
Right.
You know, the tightness of the chest, the anxiety hitting you. Your body is also one of the best paranormal investigating tools. Listen to what your body has to tell you. Because if you start feeling things, if you feel a change in the atmosphere, if you feel like something is watching you, or even like something is oppressing you, it probably is. They do all sorts of things to try to interact with you, some positively, some negatively. And I have rarely heard of anybody getting hurt by anything paranormal. You know, there's the famous, there's these exorcist cases, possession cases, which I have some doubts on in some cases, but it's still, in general, nothing can really hurt you. You might experience...
Are you talking about the Warrens by any chance? I'm just thinking about, well-known historical cases.
Well, you had the Warrens in Amityville. Don't get me started on the Warrens. They made a bunch of movies about them, but yeah...
Well, Annabelle's...
I'm not going to say anymore. I'm not going to berate people who are not here anymore, but yeah.
No, that's fine. It does sadden me as well. They're, obviously I can't judge them for their story because I wasn't there, but somebody's now taken over their collection of supposed haunted instruments and taken Annabelle out of her case and on tour at the moment.
Yeah, and Annabelle disappeared too on tour. They were in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
Right.
And Annabelle disappeared. I think they got her back, but I don't know the story behind that. But the guy who owned Annabelle, not long afterwards, dropped dead. So now somebody else...
I heard about that case. That was really sad, but is it just coincidence maybe? Or do you believe that thing is actually infused with some negative energy?
Some objects can have an attachment to them. I have a friend who has a ring that's carved and looks like almost like Pan, the god, the satyr Pan, or could look like the devil. You take your pick, but it was handmade and it's been estimated to be about 400 years old and found in Italy. And it has an energy to it. It has a personality sometimes too. And sometimes my friend will wear the ring. She feels like called to wear it. And her personality changes a little bit. She gets more mischievous. She keeps it locked up in a safe otherwise. But I visited 2 years ago, so I got to examine it in person. Wore it. I didn't really feel much. But taking pictures of it, I got the strangest. And again, this could be pareidolia. I admit that up front. However, in several pictures, close-up pictures I've took, it's all made out of silver. It's got a big nose. It's got ruby ignits for its eyes. When I blow the picture up, you could see figures in the eyes. That's not me. Doesn't look anything like me. Or even in the shadow on the nose, there appears to be something. You see faces. And it's always different with every picture. So fascinating. I really can't say what is attached to it. It might have been used in occult practices at some point. I don't know.
Either way, it's fascinating. You're so lucky to have those opportunities as well to kind of have things, see things face to face ultimately, and then have a free judgment as to sort of what you think it might be. I think in these investigations, also one thing to touch on really is the fact that you can't really understate the need for good mental health when you go through these experiences, because I know that you say people get scared because they haven't seen these things like this before, they freak out, and you think many years into the game they would stop doing that. But when you go in there and truly do feel scared, you can leave yourself open to certain things, maybe feeding off. I'm just talking about my own experiences. You may think differently, of course, but from my own experiences, fear does fuel these things, and if you just meet the wrong kind of negative energy, they love it. And I've noticed that I went on an investigation a while ago, and I did find it scary at first, but I began to truly calm down about halfway through, and I realised actually it isn't that bad. And that's when things really began to kick off, but in a more positive way, where we had objects moving, unexplained noises being recorded, EVP recordings, and we saw kind of mists and all sorts of different things going. And I remember specifically a table levitating. It actually levitated off the ground. We got on video as well, which was incredible. But yeah, like it's quite hard either way. I mean, it's easier to be said really though, but in person, it's hard to keep your mental health in a good place when you're in those environments. I mean, you may not have any though, but I could ask you the question really, like, do you have any techniques that you recommend people might maybe employ before they go in, or maybe when they're finding things are getting a bit much for them? You did mention kind of walking away and getting a breath of fresh air though, but is there anything else that you recommend that people could do just to get them in the right space again and keep them safe?
First and foremost, going into an investigation, don't drink or take substances beforehand, because you're lowering your resistance and you put yourself at risk to things. And it's just stupid anyway. When I go into an investigation, I do a mental image of surrounding myself with bright light, white of protection. And when I'm done with an investigation, I audibly say out loud, "Thank you, but you're not allowed to follow me home. You're not allowed to attach yourself to me. You just say this because you're putting out your intent. And that intent has energy, and that energy can put up a barrier to keep something from attaching itself to you and following you home."
Okay.
So
I need to bring you to one of our next investigations. I think you could teach a few people a few good tricks. Okay. I've only been to 2 so far. I'm going to a 3rd in March, I believe, and it's in an old prison.
I like those.
And the catacombs under a prison as well, which will be interesting, because apparently this place isn't open to the public most of the year. Actually, it's very rarely open. So I'm interested to see what we get down there. My top end of scary, because I'm used to scary. I've lived around these so-called paranormal experiences most of my life, really. But there are some places that I do kind of feel a bit overwhelmed. So I'll be trying those things, and I'll make sure. I don't really drink much alcohol anyway, and don't take substances, but I'll make sure I'm nice and clean and healthy before I do that. I've also heard people mention as well keeping a bottle of water with you as well, because simply the act of drinking helps to ground you, like not just simply like spirituality wise, but mentally as well. It just brings you back to the present moment, so you can just gather your thoughts. Now I do that when I'm doing big presentations as well. It's like having a bottle of water with me and take a sip every now and again, just to get me to calm down and not be scared in front of the camera.
Well, it's also staying hydrated too, and being hydrated, your body is in better shape.
Definitely. I realise we'll be rounding up soon on our hour, but I want to ask you a final kind of question about your experiences. Is there a single experience that you've maybe experienced, or you've heard from one of the people that you've interviewed, that you think would be a great example of proof of the paranormal, at least the possibility of the paranormal, to somebody who might be skeptical in some way or form?
Well, to be honest, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, and I've had my own experiences, and even the things I've talked about here, none of it can be offered as proof to a skeptic or to scientists, because this type of phenomenon can't be repeated on a whim, or you can't put it in a laboratory and study it, and it's not consistent. It happens when it wants to happen. So there really isn't anything you can do to ever convince somebody it's real. But for your own research and peace of mind, investigate, see what you experience, see if you can explain it in a rational way. And if not, then you're left with something unknown, which could be paranormal. But yeah, I mean, I've investigated a lot of cases. One, we did a house where, and this was back in the days when internet was pretty young. We put a webcam on a computer in a basement of this house that had activity. And there were 2 computers, and at one end, the owner would sit and use that computer. This other end, we put a webcam that at the time only took still pictures every 10 seconds. And we would monitor it remotely because we uploaded it to our website. And we caught in 2 pictures apparitions. The best one was the client sitting at her computer, and you look to the right, there's the stairs going upstairs, and there's this gray, misty form. It looks like a woman in a dress, long hair down the back, almost hunched over a little bit, getting ready to climb the stairs. Very clear, very, very clear picture. Wow. And so We noticed this live when it happened, and we called her on the phone and we said, "Is there anybody down there in the basement with you?" She goes, "No, I'm here by myself." So I thought that was a pretty good piece of evidence.
The technology of the time, not just a webcam as well, like having enough detail to record that's amazing. It's amazing how these devices pick up things unexpectedly. I remember, I really wish I took a photo of this or could record it, but I couldn't. But basically, when my daughter was very young, we were quite new parents back in the day. We had one of the like a video monitors where we could see her cot, just check in on her every so many minutes.
Baby monitor, yeah.
Yeah, baby monitor, yeah. Back then, it wasn't the most advanced device. It was kind of like low res, but it was just enough for us to see that she's okay and everything. But I remember us both looking at the camera once and seeing an object over the lens. I thought, okay, maybe it's a bug of some sort. What we saw was, and this lasted about 5 seconds as we watched the entire thing happen, a large mass of white floating over my daughter's crib at the time. It had depth to it. You could see shading around it like it was a fully solid object, and you could see the light reflecting off the top edge of this. It almost looked like an egg shape, like a misshapen egg, and it was slowly moving just over her bed and then just faded gradually in about, like I say, that 5 seconds. And we both looked at each other and no explanation for it. It could be a visual glitch of some sort, but you could see it was consistent within the resolution of the image, if that makes sense. You could tell what actually was there in the room. Nothing was being overlaid, as in like a glitch in its software.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's at a time when she was shuffling in her bed at the time, so I don't know if that was just coincidence of the timing, really, but never happened again. We never had that defect of any sort, because usually if something is wrong with an object, you'll see it begin to repeat over time, and eventually it'll just stop working entirely. We had that baby monitor for about a couple of years. I think we used it consistently. Only ever happened once. So yeah, really strange. But it's amazing, like the most basic of technology can record these events. But now we all have phones with cameras on that can record video, photo, and all sorts nowadays. And this seems to be part of this whole wave of more people being open to the paranormal, because more people are literally able to show somebody, "Oh, I saw this the other day. Look, I've literally taken a photo of it," which is amazing, really. But as I think Malcolm mentioned on our episode, really, the downside of that is with AI being brought into the game now, things can be more easily faked. So, like, faking imagery, like photo, video, is available to more people that don't have the skill to edit photo and video. But I suppose that's why I have like a slight benefit, though, like, because I'm a graphic designer by day, so I do a lot of image editing, so I can tell when something's been fully doctored or has been generated by AI. And I've seen some pretty crazy things over the time in that regards. But anyway, thank you so much, Melissa, for being here tonight. And just before we round up as well, I'd like to ask you about Transdimensional Realities, really, because I was privileged to be there on your first episode. I had a great time, and hopefully the episode did well for you in sharing the message. And obviously you've had other guests on too since. Like, could you tell the guys watching this, like, what it's about, basically? Like, what's the mission of the show, and where do you think it might be going?
As far as the mission of the show, it's in the name. It's talking about the different aspects of our reality that most people don't really understand or know about. All these strange, weird things that people experience, things I've experienced. And I call it transdimensional because I think it goes into different dimensions that overlap ours. We sometimes flit in and out of dimensions and we're not aware of it. Everything has something to do with dimensions, time slips, alternate reality, and the paranormal. A lot of the paranormal is covered under that, but there's a lot of other phenomenon too that's not classically paranormal that I think falls under that umbrella. So with the show, my goal is to be kind of like, I use Art Bell as my old inspiration. Used to host Coast to Coast, and do a bunch of different subjects and topics, from traditional ghost interviews to talking about really heady stuff sometimes that will like challenge your view of reality. That's kind of the goal for the program, is to do a lot of different topics, interview a lot of different people, and just have great discussions about everything in our reality, everything around us.
And it's a great show, actually. I listened to the last one, actually. But yeah, where can people actually watch, or I suppose more listen as well to the show? I know it's on Paranormal UK Radio, but yeah, which channel is it on?
Well, we have our website, but our station goes out on all major podcast networks, Apple, Samsung, Google, Breaker. Oh, I can't, even Audible. It's going out on Audible now. So everyone picks it up.
That's amazing.
You can always go and, those shows are play on demand, stream or download. And, once they're posted, they're there forever. So you can go back, listen to old shows. I started doing this show as video as well. And that's posted both on Paranormal UK Radio Network has its own channel. So it's posted there, but I also post it on my personal YouTube page, which is under my name, Melissa Leigh. And you can find it there too.
Amazing. I'll be sure to add the links below the video, of course. So, yeah, you mentioned Art Bell. Just one thing just rings a bell with me. Pardon the pun. He's famous for a particular call that went viral many years ago about somebody called into the station about their, I think, abduction experience. Does that ring any bells? I think it was Art Bell that kind of took this call back in the day, and he kind of became quite well known for this particular.
Well, there were a couple of phone calls that came in. One was some guy crying hysterically on the phone, claiming that he worked from Area 51, and he was talking about all these aliens. They're not what we think, and it was totally hysterical. Somebody came out later and tried to say that it was them and it was a hoax. Who knows? There was also another one where a guy flying an airplane was patched into his show and tried to fly over Area 51 and was shot down. And again, there's no way of knowing if these are real or not, or somebody faked them. But yeah, I liked Art's interview style. He had a lot of different variety of guests. I actually, one of my old shows was on his last network before he passed away. I was his lead-in show.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was a good experience. I never got to talk to him, though.
Gosh, you are amazing. The amount of things you've done, really. Because it's that one that I heard years ago. Believe it or not, I didn't actually hear the full recording. I'm a big fan of Tool back in the day. Basically, one of Tool's song has a clip from that call, I think at the end of one of their albums. I forget exactly which one it is. And it really freaked me out when I heard it. And I thought, something about this doesn't feel right. I just happened to come across the recording a few years later when YouTube was quite new, actually. That clip, and I thought, I recognise that from the Tool album. I listened to the whole phone call, and it really frightened me, because I'd never had an extraterrestrial experience before, at least back then anyway. There's something in his voice. It doesn't seem like an actor acts and can seem very convincing. Like, you think about, the Tom Cruises out there, and I don't know. For some reason, that's the only actor I can think of at the moment. Not like he's, it's not as if he's the best actor ever, though. But either way, when an actor acts really well, they're acting, and there's a certain level that they don't fully push themselves to. Maybe some do on occasions, but this particular one, something about it seems wrong. As in, it's somebody truly, truly, truly in distress. And I heard the follow-up clip to that where somebody claimed to be that person and it was all a hoax. And they didn't sound the way they did then. And yeah, it could be somebody having a manic depressive episode as well. Like sometimes people have certain mental conditions where they can hallucinate, their personalities may be affected, all sorts of different things. But there's something about that in my gut felt like, I don't know, there's something to that. But just like you say, like, how can we ever know, truly, unless we were there? But
at least back then,
either way, Art Bell, great job.
At least back then, it wasn't AI creating it. And that's another reason why it's going to be impossible to show any real evidence. Everyone will automatically assume it's AI now.
Yes, that's true. Unless, a trained professional like myself, and I'm sure you can tell the difference yourself too, like what's AI and what's not at the moment. So we use AI at the company I work with to generate certain things, and it's advancing quite a lot. We seem to be at this precipice, and I think we've been a few times at this revelatory moment, really, where more people are talking about this whole disclosure movement, and I've seen more of the popular news channels like CNN, I think News Nation, although they're not as popular as CNN though, but talk about this subject, about the potential of life being out there, and there being a historical connection to certain activity. And I don't know, it seems like something's happening at the moment, and maybe we've been at this point in history before in the past and never quite got there just yet, but something seems a bit different about this stage of history. Especially with the Disclosure Day trailer. I don't know if you've seen that by, I think, Steven Spielberg's latest project. There's word about that he's part of the I don't know if it's government or something, but a steady disclosure to reveal layers and layers of something that would be so shocking to most of the populace that, you know, it would cause ontological shock. So I think they're trying to avoid that effect and gradually ease people in, maybe. Or it might just be another Independence Day kind of film. But it's interesting how we're shifting from films like Independence Day and various other films where we see other life as being dangerous. I think I can't really count many where they're seen as being benign, like, you know, E.T. You know, I know that's a kids' movie. Close Encounters as well, being obviously one of Stephen's work from long ago. It's interesting that we're beginning to move back to, there might not be that scary. There might be something more to this. Even though the trailer itself was pretty trippy, to say the least. Emily Blunt. Yeah,
we're going in. I see us shifting into a new paradigm. You know, back in the old days, in the 70s, it was friendly aliens. In the 80s and 90s and afterwards, it was aliens all trying to conquer us, alien invasions. Now with the disclosure project underway and people trying to really push for disclosure, I think that the films are changing again, and this new film will be a part of that. I don't think it's going to introduce, you know, terrible aliens.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Spielberg's done some pretty amazing things in his life, and there are particular projects where he's hired to not promote a narrative though, but something more meaningful for humanity. So there was Close Encounters, and that's said to be an earlier phase of introducing the world to that, and then they changed that narrative a bit. And then there's, of course, Schindler's List, incredible film. I recommend anybody watch that, and it's heart-wrenching. I feel like everybody on this planet needs to watch it just once in their life, just to appreciate the need for humanity being human and keeping to that. I have a close family history to that event as well, so that's the reason. But either way, like, he did that to, again, pass a message to humanity. This could be his third film for that very reason. Maybe. I might be wrong. I mean, we'll see what happens when it releases in June this year, I believe.
It's June or Christmas, I forget. You can find the trailer on YouTube.
Yes, I'll probably post a link there as well. Anyway, it's worth a watch though. But yeah, Melissa, you've been fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your world with us all, really. I'll be sure to send everybody over to your show, and I look forward to future episodes. And good luck for 2026 with the show as well.
Thank you very much, Stan, and thank you for having me on. This has been wonderful. I've thoroughly
appreciate
enjoyed
you.
it.
No, you're a great speaker. Thank you very much. You take care.
Bye.
Choice, sharing dreams and blowing off steam. We'll lend you a hand, we'll let you stand, sharing stories about the unknown. Paranormal perspectives, we're here to inspect it. I'm a small, not a medium. Let us escape from this tedium, learning from each other, breaking barriers, a message of hope, birthed from the unknown. Who you gonna call? I'm not a ghostbuster, no proton packs, just crossing streams of knowledge. It's not so scary when things get hairy. It's not the paranormal, just future normal. Breaking barriers, no longer the carrier, releasing the fear and replacing it with knowledge. Understanding each other, we uncover a whole new point of view within you. Paranormal perspectives, we're here to inspect it. I'm a small, not a medium. Let us escape from this tedium, learning from each other, breaking barriers, a message of hope, birthed from the unknown. The only stream we need to cross is the platforms to get the message across. Knowing each other, sister to brother. No ghost or spirit or demon will ever get the better of this medium. Paranormal perspective. small, not a medium. Let us escape from this tedium, learning from each other, breaking barriers. A message of hope birthed from the unknown.